Help me. One day, a man came home late from work. He climbed onto the bus and without knowing it, he fell asleep. Time still passes, he still sleeps, the car still runs. Suddenly he woke up startled and saw no one around, the street was deserted. The driver also disappeared. But there's something strange. The car still rolls slowly. He shouted in panic. Help me! Help me! Nobody answered. A moment later he heard a scream. What help? Come down and help me push the cart. Wake-up call. One night at a budget motel, a guest asked to be woken up at 6 a.m. The next morning, it wasn't until 6:30 that the phone rang. Good morning, a guy said shyly. This is your wake-up call. Annoyed, the customer shouted, you should have called me at 6 a.m. What if I have a multi-million-dollar contract to close this morning and your negligence causes me to miss it? Oh, sir, the receptionist quickly responded, if you had a multi-million-dollar deal about to close, you probably wouldn't be staying in this motel. Congratulations on your new position. A new business was about to open and one of the owner's friends wanted to send flowers for the occasion. They arrived at the new business location and the owner read the card. It says, "Rest in peace." The angry owner called the florist to complain. He made it clear to the florist how angry he was about the obvious mistake. The florist wisely diffused the man's anger when she calmly said, "Sir, I'm really sorry for this mistake, but imagine this, somewhere there's a funeral today, and they add flowers with a message saying, 'Congratulations on your new position.'" Where are lawyers? An engineer dies and reports to the pearly gates. St. Peter checks his dossier and says, you're an engineer, you're in the wrong place. So the engineer reports to the gates of hell and is let in. Pretty soon, the engineer gets dissatisfied with the level of comfort in hell, and starts designing and building improvements. After a while, they got air conditioning, flush toilets and escalators, and the engineer is becoming a pretty popular guy. One day God calls Satan up on the telephone and asks with a sneer, "So, how's it going down there in hell?" Satan replies, "Hey, things are going great. We've got air conditioning, flush toilets and escalators, and there's no telling what this engineer is going to come up with next." God replies, "What? You've got an engineer? That's a mistake, he should never have gotten down there, send him up here." Satan says, "No way. I like having an engineer on the staff, and I'm keeping him." God says, "Send him back up here or I'll sue." Satan laughs uproariously and answers, "Yeah, right. And just where are you going to get a lawyer?" I'm afraid. A robust-looking gentleman ate a fine meal at an expensive restaurant and topped it off with some Napoleon brandy, then he summoned the head waiter. "Do you recall," he asked pleasantly, "how a year ago, I ate just such a repast here and then, because I couldn't pay for it, you had me thrown into the gutter like a common bum?" "I'm very sorry, sir," began the contrite head waiter. "Oh, it's quite all right," said the guest, "but I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you again." The chauffeur delivering scientific speech. A famous scientist was on his way to yet another lecture when his chauffeur offered his employer an unusual proposition. "I've heard your speech so many times I bet I could deliver it and give you the night off," he said. "That sounds great," the scientist said. When they got to the auditorium, the scientist put on the chauffeur's cap and sat in the back row. The chauffeur walked up to the lectern, delivered the speech and asked if there were any questions. Yes, said a man in the audience, and launched into a highly technical question. The chauffeur was panic-stricken for a moment but quickly recovered. That's an easy one, he replied. It is so easy, in fact, that I'm going to get my chauffeur to stand up and answer it. This isn't your room. Joe had lived with his wife Mary in their little home deep in the woods for 50 years. To celebrate their 50th anniversary, he took her to the big city and they checked into an upscale hotel. Mary had a complaint for the bellman. We refuse to settle for such a small room. We don't have any windows or fan, or even a bed. But, madam. Mary interrupted the man. Don't you but, madam me. She stormed. You can't treat us like we're a couple of fools just because we don't travel much, and we've never been to the big city, and we've never spent the night at a hotel. I'm going to complain to the manager. But, madam, the bellman finally got out. This isn't your room. It's the elevator. Business and fishing. One day a fisherman was lying on a beautiful beach, with his fishing pole propped up in the sand. He was enjoying the warmth of the afternoon sun and the prospect of catching a fish. About that time, a businessman came walking down the beach, trying to relieve some of the stress of his workday. He noticed the fisherman sitting on the beach and decided to find out why this fisherman was fishing instead of working harder to make a living for himself and his family. You aren't going to catch many fish that way, said the businessman to the fisherman. You should be working rather than lying on the beach. The fisherman looked up at the businessman, smiled and replied, and what will my reward be? Well, you can get bigger nets and catch more fish. And then what will my reward be? Asked the fisherman, still smiling. You will make money and you'll be able to buy a boat, which will then result in larger catches of fish. And then what will my reward be? Asked the fisherman again. The businessman was beginning to get a little irritated with the fisherman's questions. You can buy a bigger boat, and hire some people to work for you, he said. And then what will my reward be? Repeated the fisherman. The businessman was getting angry. Don't you understand? You can build up a fleet of fishing boats, sail all over the world, and let all your employees catch fish for you. Once again the fisherman asked, and then what will my reward be? The businessman was red with rage and shouted at the fisherman, don't you understand that you can become so rich that you will never have to work for your living again? You can spend all the rest of your days sitting on this beach, looking at the sunset. You won't have a care in the world. The fisherman, still smiling, looked up and said, and what do you think I'm doing right now? Reserved seating. An usher in a very posh theater noticed a man sprawled across 3 seats. Sorry, sir, the usher said, but you're only allowed 1 seat. The man groaned but didn't budge. The usher became impatient and said, Sir, if you don't get up from there I'm going to have to call the manager. Again, the man just groaned, which infuriated the usher, who turned and marched briskly back up the aisle in search of his manager. In a few moments, both the usher and the manager returned and stood over the man. Together the two of them tried repeatedly to move him. All right, buddy, the manager said. What's your name? Sam, the man moaned. Where did you come from, Sam? With pain in his voice, Sam replied, the balcony. What color? As soon as the husband returned from work, his wife immediately said, the neighbor is so ungrateful. I told him to climb the tree to pick jackfruit for me. He said he didn't dare climb the ladder because he was afraid of climbing too high. I climbed up to pick it up, but the guy kept looking up and saying, I saw it. I ask you what you see? He said I saw red underwear. It's because you're so reckless that they tease you. But yesterday, brother, I also climbed up to pick jackfruit. That guy also stood below and said, this time it's blue. How ungrateful. Tomorrow that guy still looks at you and talks like that. I will force him to meet his mother. Then today my husband asked his wife, are you climbing jackfruit again today? Are the neighbors looking at you again? What color did it say? Oh, I'm not stupid anymore. I'm smarter and I'm not wearing anything today. That guy just kept quiet, just raised his face and didn't dare say anything else. Thank you for your listening.